The release of Google's updated Gemini 3 AI model last month has driven user growth. It has also prompted OpenAI CEO Sam Altman to reportedly declare a, quote, code red to improve the quality of its chatbot, ChatGPT. Our next guest says that has also touched off a civil war within AI, further carving a divide between those supporting the Google complex and the OpenAI complex. Joining me now, Michael O'Rourke, JonesTrading Chief Market Strategist. Mike, great to see you again. Thanks for sticking with us. So, we have talked before about your belief that indeed AI is trading in a bubble here. And we've gotten more headlines like this where there is more competition within the AI space. It seems like bulls have sort of been betting on everything to win, right? That it's a big enough pie that everybody will get a slice. Is that the way that people should be thinking about it?
I don't think that's the way people should be thinking about it. But we've developed this pattern in the past 15 years or so, is that when a leader comes about in the technology space, it seems to be a winner-take-all proposition. And so investors are willing to pay extremely high multiples, especially in the early stages, because you're expecting the company to own the space in the long term, and you're going to make it up as time passes. But I think what the events of the past few weeks have shown, where Google came out of nowhere, out of left field with Gemini 3, all of a sudden it leapfrogged OpenAI to have the best performing LLM, and then in parallel to that, they have their own TPUs that's where they trained Gemini 3 on, and that's performed really well. And of course, they're a lot cheaper than NVIDIA's GPUs. And while all these companies, right now, there is, of course, room for all these companies in the space that's growing, but it does make you think, well, obviously, success breeds competition. And what you're going to see is I would say it's almost a blood sport between the largest, most capitalized organizations in the world finally competing with one another. And that's where the risk is, because they're going to be trying to outspend each other and outdo one another in order to win this space. And traditionally, they've generally had weaker competition, not the largest organizations in the world. So
what we've seen in the markets as of late, with the NASDAQ pulling back, right? It hasn't been a huge pullback from the highs. It's something like 3%. Does that bring a little more rationality into this? Or do you think that there is still a long way down potentially to go?
I think it brings a little more rationality in the sense of what we've seen is rotation into Google and Broadcom, as there's been some profit taking in NVIDIA and the likes of Oracle, who's partnered with OpenAI. So you're seeing rotation, which is healthy, because at least investors are recognizing that there are risks that someone else can come out, again, another player or someone else can come in and make a big move somewhere. And that's good that investors are at least acknowledging there's risk out there. But in the same respect, we're pricing in many cases, forward earnings for the next several years based on forecasts and projections. I mean, I think one of the market's biggest or investors' biggest problems with everything that OpenAI has done is having $1.4 trillion in spending commitments that are integrated in the order books of all the major technology firms in the world, for that matter, and they're unsure if OpenAI is going to be able to make good on those commitments. And then all of a sudden, you have something like Google jump ahead. It raises further doubts. So I think that's where the risk is. Yeah, we know the earnings estimates are good. We know the forecasts are good, but everything has to be taken with a big grain of salt at this point in time, because the landscape shifted in the past couple of weeks.
Well, and into this environment, it looks like the Fed might cut rates, right, at its meeting. And in past situations where we have a somewhat speculative environment, even if the rate cut is expected, is there a risk of putting fuel on the fire here?
I think there's a little bit of a risk. Honestly, the Fed has kind of made itself an irrelevant institution at this point in time. We have a massive balance sheet, which we finally have into some type of ample reserves balance, but it's still double the level it was, prior to the pandemic. So when things like economic data and events in the economy don't really matter to the Fed anymore, because again, we've had 2 insurance rate cuts. Now we're thinking of doing a third insurance rate cut. The current unemployment rate is still lower than 74, 75% of monthly readings over the past 60, 70 years. It's just that the Fed's made itself irrelevant, and that is why change at the Fed's probably will be a good thing, next year. So it adds a little fuel to the fire, but I think that's a secondary factor here.
Fair enough, Mike. Good to see you. Thanks so much.
We awake to story today that OpenAI CEO Sam Altman is issuing some form of code red warning to his teams, basically wants to pick up the pace on development. What bothers me here, Tom, is that this company underpins the AI trade. It's linked up with AMD, it's linked up with NVIDIA, and if OpenAI is going to fall behind here, what does that mean to the broader AI ecosystem and the various trades that investors have fallen in love with?
Brian, you have hit the nail on the head, and this is what matters to investors in this story, right? The Google Gemini AI model is a huge deal because it threatens to make OpenAI and ChatGPT substantially less relevant. And here's why that matters for all of us. ChatGPT, OpenAI, has committed to spending over $1 trillion in the coming years to fund data center build out. If all of a sudden their revenue prospects dim because Google, which already has a presence everywhere, is going to become the dominant AI model player, then the outlook for ChatGPT just got a lot worse. That means they're not going to have the money to fund all of these commitments they've made, commitments which stocks have already rallied on. So if OpenAI, this is absolutely code red. This is code red for OpenAI. It's also code red for the AI enthusiasm trade. We need to see ChatGPT step up. Otherwise, it's not just OpenAI in the private market that risks dropping a lot. It's the whole AI ecosystem, and that would be a problem for the S&P 500.
Tom, if this is in fact code red for the broader AI ecosystem, I'm going to assume that a lot of people have already missed a pretty substantial move in Google. I'm going to swipe it off to the side for a second. Is this the moment where you go back to a name like Meta that is not reliant on OpenAI, that is spending billions of dollars on CapEx? The street didn't like that a couple weeks ago when they reported earnings, but here's a company growing its core Instagram business, Facebook, and going to be a major player in AI and doesn't necessarily need an OpenAI.
Yes, I think so. And that's what I think, again, this is such a big deal with Google stepping out with Gemini, is that you look at these well-capitalized mega cap tech companies, they don't need to worry about finding funding to pay for all the things they've committed to. They can do that from cash flow and from a very, very favorable debt market. So I do like Meta as a tangential from a Google.
Inez, over to you. What concerns me here, amongst everything that I was just mentioning, is a company like AMD. They came out a couple months ago, signed a big deal with OpenAI. The stock shot up. Immediately you thought AMD is going to be raking billions of dollars from OpenAI. They're also going to have an investor in the form of OpenAI. I believe it's a potential 10% stake over time. That bothers me. If OpenAI can't deliver right now, if you're an AMD shareholder, you got to be quaking in your boots.
Yes, and look, when you saw that the stock reaction when the report on the Google and Meta potential deal with their TPUs, the Google AI chips, you saw that NVIDIA fell on that day, and AMD did as well. The fact that you have Alphabet or Google that is it has its TPU chips, which they don't necessarily, okay, fine, they don't compete directly with NVIDIA's GPUs, but certainly this is sort of a diversification play for them. And the fact that you also have their Google Gemini, which has been integrated into Google. What's very interesting is that the street had been concerned that ChatGPT was going to displace Google search, yet Google was able to integrate Google Gemini into its Google search, and it still has the best of both worlds, because if you're going to use Google search, you're going to probably use it to look for a local handyman, right? And that still goes with their ad part of their business. But with their Gemini, you're looking at it for more deep research, for more helping out with term papers, whatever that may be. But nonetheless, this is Google firing at all cylinders, and this is sort of having a ricochet effect on the rest of the AI players.